Hello. I'm James, and this is Jared. We're from Digital Primates. We are going to teach you about Chromecast and an intro to getting a Chromecast app up.
So first off, the question is, what can Chromecast do, right? So in general, Chromecast is a media streaming device, okay? We're actually not going to talk about any of that today, because that stuff is too simple, okay? In addition to streaming media, it can also be used for games. They even have some games library in there to calculate physics and that kind of stuff. We're not really going to talk about that either, but know that it's there, okay? More of what we're interested in is more of just a general application level and what you can do kind of building your own custom applications on the Chromecast. And what that effectively comes down to is it's Chrome. It's running Chrome on that little stick. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit more as we move on. Also, if anyone has questions throughout, go ahead and ask them, because we're probably not coming back to it. So in general, there are two different applications that are running in a Chromecast setup, okay? You have your sender application and you have your receiver application, okay? The sender application is effectively your remote, right? The thing that you're running either on your Android device, your iOS device, or in your web browser, specifically your Chrome browser. And that's just effectively a web page if you're running it in Chrome, which is what we're doing here. And then you have your receiver app, okay? Your receiver app is actually what is being run off of the little Chromecast dongle that you're using. And that is quite literally just a web page running on that little device. And obviously this is what you see on the TV. So to kind of explain this architecture, we have this nice little diagram here that is actually incorrect, but we're going to use it anyway. So effectively, your sender application, okay, is going to discover your device based on what it sees on the network, okay? This is actually not completely accurate because it uses the cloud to actually find out which devices are near it and that kind of stuff. It also uses, if you're actually not on the same network, it'll actually use a subsonic ping to actually establish that connection. But you both still need an internet access because it's actually making that connection through Google's cloud. So once it's kind of made that device discovery, you can then connect to it and effectively go through Google's cloud to tell the receiver application what you want it to do. So this is where you're actually going to tell the receiver, hey, load up this application. And then the receiver will actually go pull that application down from Google's cloud and run that locally on the device. And then any communication is again transferred through the cloud. So there's very rarely any direct communication happening between the device and your sender app.
Even during development.
Even during development. And we'll kind of get into some pros and cons about how that works. But first, just to kind of explain the setup here, the entire presentation you see is actually running on our Chromecast device. Okay, so that entire application is just a web page that we are rendering over here on the receiver app.
Just explain where it is, people can't see it at the back.
That little device right there, if you can't see it. Okay? And then on our machine, we have a small local web page acting as our sender application, which is really just a couple of buttons forward and back. Really simple dummy web application.
So you're not like casting a tab right now?
No.
Correct. We are not casting the tab. Huh?
So what? Go ahead.
So this is literally just running a web page that is loaded onto the receiver. So the sender asks the through Google's cloud, hey, I want this application ID to run on that device. So that device then grabs that application, which is just a web page that it hits, pulls it down, and renders it in Chrome. And this is just the monitor that it's full screening effectively for that URL.
And so each time you press your little virtual button there, it's just saying is it load a whole new page, or it
Nope.
just says do this thing?
Right, so all it's
Interesting.
doing is it's sending a message and it says, hey, I want next page.
Okay.
And then we have some logic in the receiver app of what that means.
So where's the page? Is it hosted somewhere or
Yes.
upload it to Google or?
You have to host it.
Yeah, so you have to host it.
Okay.
I mean, you could host it through, Google's cloud platform and all that, but
Google doesn't want to mess with it, I guess.
yeah.
You just register an application and Google gives you an ID for it and says, oh, here's your application ID. And then whenever you want to load it, you just say, hey, Google's API, I want to load this application ID. And it goes out and gets it.
Yeah. So when you register your app, you provide a URL. And then whenever you ask for that app in the future, it's going to direct them to that URL.
So if it's like the HBO Now app, whatever, for Chromecast.
Yep.
If I could figure out what that URL was, I can go directly to it without going through Chromecast.
Absolutely.
In the web
Yes.
browser.
Yep.
Yes. Although their app will probably have some sort of authentication
Oh, sure.
and
Yeah.
require things like that. But yeah, you could just go to that if you can figure it out.
Yeah, so
It shouldn't be
usually
too hard. But.
there's going to be some sort of built-in handshake between the sender and the receiver so that you can't just like pop one into existence and, kind of get around a bunch of stuff, but
Was it sounded like you were saying that it'll go to a URL and grab something and bring it down locally.
Yeah.
And that could be some form of just web content, but it could also be is there some sort of like native application that it can download? Or is it all web
it's
technology?
all
It's
just a
basic-
web page.
Yeah, it's any application you
Yep.
can basically run in Chrome. So it's like a web app. It can pull that.
Yep.
So it supports everything that Chrome supports? Like, so you do WebGL, stuff like that you could do?
I don't want to say everything, but it's possible. I don't know.
Maybe the
I don't
new
know if
Chromecast
there's
can do more.
specific limitations or whatnot. What?
Maybe the 4K Chromecast can do even more, like with the WebGL stuff you're talking about, since it's more powerful.
Yeah. I mean, you might run into some like processing power with WebGL and whatnot. It'll probably try. Yeah. So anyway, so there's some kind of pros and cons with this model, right? In terms of casting media, it's really nice if that media is hosted somewhere on the internet, because the alternative, right, is to go through the device that you're casting from and then have that device cast over the local network to your receiver, right? And of course, that introduces a bunch of problems where you have, issues of like, oh, if I turn off my device, or I put my phone on sleep and set it down, or something like that, right? So with the Chromecast architecture, it's very much a send and forget, right? I tell it, go load this application, and now it's running there, right? So if I load in a piece of media, it'll keep playing that as long as it doesn't hear something to say stop, right? There's also lower latency between the receiver and the content, so because you're not funneling through either the handheld or through the laptop or whatever, you're not having to keep passing it along, so your machine doesn't have to act as a middleman. And then again, because both are just web pages, they're completely customizable. So if you want to render something with a border and have some like interaction or some like tweets come up on the side as you're watching some live video or something, you can customize it to be that. In this case, we've customized it to the point of being a presentation, PowerPoint-ish kind of thing. And that goes for the sender app as well, right? So if you want custom interaction with, how you can kind of sort through the media and that kind of stuff, again, you're making a web page or a native app on your device. And then the cons, we kind of already talked about the sender to receiver latency. So if from the device, right, I want to cast my screen, right, because I'm not directly communicating with the receiver from my device, it now has to go through Google's cloud, right? So effectively, I'm streaming it up to Google, and then Google is now pushing that content back down to the receiver. So when you cast a tab, that's why it's so like jerky, or so, you know, like you can see it stutter. The other cons, you're reliant on Google's APIs. So right now, if you want to make a sender app that's not Android, iOS, or Chrome, too bad, you can't. And then third, their documentation is terrible. And in most of the cases, a lot of the cases, it's just wrong.
Yeah, it's a trap because it looks like it's well documented,
Yeah.
but it doesn't follow any of the
Yeah.
behaviors it says.
So we've run into a lot of APIs where it's like, I'm literally following the documentation, and it spits out an error immediately. So then you look up that error, and it goes, this error should never occur.
Yeah, that happens.
Like,
a lot.
that's
It
useful.
It actually does return errors. It says this can only return these 4 errors and nothing else.
Yeah.
And what you're getting isn't
Yeah.
one of those.
So, yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah,
You said you have to use iOS, Android, or Chrome to make a sender
correct.
Yes.
sender app. So
At least that is directly supported by Google. So you could theoretically implement the same API. You know, if Firefox wanted to implement that API, they might be breaking some licensing and that kind of stuff, or they might have to pay licensing fees or something like that. But right now, theoretically, Google only supports Android, iOS, and Chrome.
what is it about the sender app that has to be restricted to those? Why can't you spin up like something like Node or something and send stuff to the internet?
It's the communication
yeah.
to the receiver app because you have to hit Google services to say, hey, load this application. You need an API that Google is going to allow you to communicate to their service, and they black box some of it within their browser, their Chrome browser. So you can't just use any browser, and I believe they do the same thing with the iOS and Android stuff, where they black box some of the communications. There may be a way to rip some of it out, but I'm not sure how well it works. And there's just things that they force it to do that you can't kind of replicate outside.
So they have, for example, one of the things they do is they have a library that implements their API that you just include in your sender app as a script tag. If you try to do that in Firefox, it just doesn't work. Like, all kinds of stuff starts blowing up, and it's trying to pull like window.chrome.cast, and it's like, I don't know what that is. And so there's a bunch of stuff obviously built into Chrome directly. So, but again, like theoretically you could implement it. I don't know what the licensing says about doing that, right? Because you still have to establish that connection to the receiver, right, through Google's APIs to tell the receiver, hey, load up this application. Okay, send this message, you know, and they do some like special formatting and that kind of stuff to get that message over there.
So these, the sender app is, we're gonna go over the sender app first, and then we'll go over the receiver app. The sender app, there are 2 APIs that you can use. You just need to include these 2 URLs in your in like a script tag or however you want to load them. They actually just changed this recently. This the Cast framework actually used to be a separate URL altogether. Now it is just a query parameter you can add, which is really good because when in the next slide you'll see that there would be race condition issues because both of these have to load before you can continue. Well, I guess if you want to use the Cast framework, both of them have to load. And once you load these frameworks, they add objects onto window, window.chrome.cast is the sender API, window.cast.framework is the Cast framework. Both of these can do the same thing, although they are a little bit different. The sender API is it's more bare bones. There's no state management. If you want to get, it effectively limits sort of what they handle and just says, here's the base of everything, like the base layer. You can do whatever you want. You can manage any of the state you want, and you can manage any of the media and things like that. Cast framework sort of wraps that it has the built-in state management and media management, makes it a lot easier. You can just say, hey, give me the current session, not give me a list of sessions, and I need to figure out which one's mine, and things like that. For the Cinder app, we should use the cast framework because it's incredibly easy. I think both of us would argue there's a benefit of not managing state that you don't need to, and it's very easy to set up.
It provides a lot of utility functions for us to kind of use.
There's a few words that we're going to use that you may want to know. The cast context is your local instance of the Chromecast objects. That's where it stores your session. It does things like that. The session itself is that object representing the connection between the sender and the receiver. The receiver is that receiver application, and the media is any media that you may be casting. The application setup. In order to set up a Cinder app, you have to do effectively the first thing. Google forces you to put a function on window, on the window object, that whenever it loads the script, it will fire this function, and it will give you whether it loaded or not, and an error if it errors out. It's usually really weird if it does error. I guess it may do it if you try to load it in Firefox, but I don't even think it'll call that function.
I don't think it will.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever actually seen an error at this point.
Yeah, I've never seen an error, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the only way to do it. So you actually have to hook onto window and have something that may pollute your namespace. If you don't like that, this is really your only choice.
I think technically one of the error cases is if you're running like a really old version of Chrome.
Oh yeah.
I think I saw that in the documentation.
So basically, what you would do after that is once you get that it is loaded, you initialize it. You create a cast options object that's on the cast API where you give it your application ID that's provided by Google when you register your app. If you give it 1, that gives you the default app. The default app we'll go into in a little bit.
We'll explain that in a bit.
The auto join policy is actually, there are a few options on that which it allows you to rejoin a session if, for whatever reason, if I cast something, I close my browser or I close my laptop and I come back in, I can actually rejoin that session and continue controlling it. They have a few options. One of them's none. Do you know what the others are? There's origin scoped, and I think there's origin and tab scope, where you have to be on the same tab. I don't know if there's any others. I think those are the only 3 they actually provide.
Yeah, I think it's only the 3.
But once you got your cast options, you have to get an instance of your cast context and then set those options, and Chrome behind the scenes will connect.
Okay. Just so I have excuse me, right context here. There's the receiver, which is the Chromecast, right?
Yes.
There's the sender, which right now is your laptop.
Yes.
Running in Chrome.
Yes.
So it's the sender app code. I guess I'm thinking about like when you have something on a device. So like I go to Netflix and I say Chromecast. The sender app is the thing that I tell the Chromecast to go get, right? Is the
No.
Okay.
No.
So-
The Cinder app is just an application that says, effectively all it really needs to do is say, hey Chromecast, here's an application and here's possibly some media or something that I want you to start on that application.
So it's the remote control.
But yes.
So in
yes.
your example, Netflix is the sender app.
Well, I mean, there's 2. There's a Netflix receiver application as well.
Right. I'm saying like when you pull up Netflix on your phone,
Yeah.
right? Your mobile application of Netflix
Right.
is the sender app.
So it sends, and if I'm debugging anything, maybe I missed it. It sends the signal through Google that sends it back down to the Chromecast. Now,
Yep.
the Chromecast obviously doesn't go back to my sender app.
Correct.
It goes to
Wherever it's
this in the cloud thing.
Yes.
Right.
So what do
Yes.
so the sender app, the receiver app, what do we call our in the cloud service?
So effectively, when your sender app, right, tells the receiver through Google's cloud, I want application 4762, whatever, right?
Right.
The receiver then is then going to go to Google's cloud and say, hey, I need to load up 4762. Google's cloud then will say, okay, go to this URL, right, because it's already registered, and load that web page. That's all it's doing, it's just loading that web page. So when you're running from Netflix and you ask for 4762, you're just loading a web page on your receiver app that Netflix has also written.
Gotcha. So I guess that's because I was getting a little confused between the sender, receiver, the cloud, but there's technically this fourth app that's the real delivery mechanism, right? I got
Yeah,
the sender
that's
and
all
then the
controlled by
website that goes.
Google. Like that fourth thing, that's like Google controls all of that.
Well, they don't control
Well-
the web
So
address.
when you're
Well, yeah.
writing for Chromecast, you're writing two apps,
Okay.
the sender and the receiver, right? So the sender is your remote, right? The receiver is the web page
The web content.
that will be pulled down and
Got it.
loaded onto the Chromecast
Got it.
receiver.
Okay. Sorry.
And what tells it that I have the sender app, what tells it that Chromecast?
That we'll get into that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's
This step is effectively just registering your. It's basically telling the Google API that hey, this is the application I'm going to request whenever I request a session, which will be the next step.
Okay.
And then our next step. Did we skip this one? Oh, I guess we didn't have a slide.
Yeah, I don't think we actually show.
Okay, well,
that piece of code.
I go back. So once you get a cast, once you create the cast instance, there actually is a function that you request a session. Off this instance, there's a function that you can just call request session, and that will, when you do that, that's what brings up that Chromecast dropdown, and you pick whatever Chromecast, and that's what sends out to the API. Says, hey, for this Chromecast, load this application.
And it's doing that by some other connection of what's in your proximity?
Yes, so that's when it does the discovery. It says, hey, on this network, what Chromecasts are on this network currently.
Got it. Okay.
And then it does some other checks because the way that they have the applications, it has to be, if the app isn't published, if you're doing like development, it says, hey, what Chromecasts that are on here are authorized to see this application you're trying to get, and then it will show a list of those.
And that discovery piece is built into both Chrome and the firmware of the receiver. So you're not actually writing that discovery code.
So did I misunderstand something though? The discovery.
Yeah.
Are you saying the discovery, as opposed to using the current network that you're on, to just communicate between your sender app and the Chromecast device, you're saying that that's also running through the cloud?
Yes.
So when your Chromecast boots up,
Yeah.
it will register with the Google Cloud saying, hey, here's my location, here's the network I'm on. Yeah. And then when your phone comes up and it also registers with the Google Cloud, it goes, oh, those two are on the same network. When he now asks to cast something or to create a session, these are the devices available to him.
But you can't, you can't be remote, you still have to be within that network. So if I go to another network,
Right. You
That-
lose access to all
Yeah.
those devices. Right. The one exception to that is the subsonic stuff. So
Yeah, the
they
guest
have like the
mode.
guest mode,
Yeah. You have
which,
to have-
yeah, it'll effectively allow you to not be on the same network, but your phone will effectively like send out a subsonic ping, and the device will hear that, and then it'll like send a unique code both to the cloud, and it'll say, okay, you can also see that
but it
device.
doesn't seem like a technical limitation, but they probably don't want to
Yeah.
do that to it.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Right.
I got a question. Now,
Yeah.
subsonic, are you saying like, are you talking about like some sort of like server technology, or are you talking about like actual?
Sound.
It's sound.
Sound.
It actually plays, yeah, it plays the
Sound.
sound you keep.
It is actually creating a ping, like an audible ping. That,
It's inaudible. Yeah.
I mean, inaudible for us, but yeah, like it is using your
The
speaker.
phone is.
Yes.
Yes.
And the Chromecast has, I guess, some sort of microphone it listens to.
Yeah.
And everything.
Oh, that's, I
Yeah.
didn't
And
realize.
everything.
So
Yes,
if your phone has like problems connecting to your network, it
Yep.
would, okay.
Yeah, or like if someone comes over and they want to like show you a video or something like that,
Oh, yeah.
but you don't want
not
to
on
give them your
network.
Wi-Fi
Oh, okay,
password
that's-
because I don't trust James. You know, you could still have them cast it up to your TV.
I guess what I was asking though, the phone is doing this, not an app on the phone. This is like a built-in thing on all phones.
So that's built into Android.
It's built into Android.
It's built into. Actually, I don't know if you can do the Audible on
You can.
Chrome.
Yeah, no, it's built into the API on your. I don't know if you can do it in the browser or not.
I don't know if you can do it from the browser.
But iOS you can as well.
But I believe
But
iOS.
it's on their API
and I-
that they provide.
Yeah, and I think you have to install the Google Home app to get that working on iOS.
That's true.
Okay, so it is software that's triggering this. It's not like
Yeah,
all of our
correct.
phones are doing it for.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'll yeah, so once you have a connection, you can effectively shut your webpage off if you want. But when you're writing an application, you kind of want to sort of, let's say you're casting a video on Netflix, you may want to be able to control the video and know what the state of the thing you're watching is on your Sender app. There are listeners for this. On this particular listener, and there's quite. This one is just the session state change. There's a lot of session states, and as you go through them, you may want to know. Like if you've ever like cast something from your web browser, you'll notice that there's like usually like a Chromecast thing that turns blue to let you know you're connected. That would be on here. You would have to listen to this on the framework API. Actually, will say, hey, the session has changed. Is there an event listener? Okay, now do something. This code doesn't really do anything but would set the web page title. But you can just do whatever you want. It just takes a function. Like it's just a regular event listener.
And just to clarify, as soon as you launch the app, it creates a session. So even if you're not connected to any devices, you have a local session.
No, it doesn't create a session. It creates the context. It doesn't create the session until you connect to a Chromecast.
Oh, right, yeah, yeah, because you're then in a disconnected state. That's right.
And sometimes you want to send messages to the receiver to control things. The Sender app, there's effectively two ways. You can send custom messages where you can send anything you want. I think it only accepts a string actually.
Custom message?
Yeah.
Yeah, only a string.
Yeah, you can send any string you want. You just have to again get the current session, and then there's a built-in send message. You have to actually give it a namespace that is both the receiver app will have and you will have as well, so they know what effectively messaging bus to listen for these messages on. Another way for media, the media itself has a bunch of built-in functions for like the play content, pause, seek, change volume, things like that. All those functions are built into the media, and you have to, for each one of those, there is a specific request you have to create to give it to it. Something like a volume change request, you'll have to give it the new volume value. But for like just play and pause, you just tell it, hey, play and pause, and it will pause whatever the current media that is playing, or will resume it.
Yeah, and these are just kind of pre-built messages for you, because
Under the hood, they basically do the same thing.
Yeah, 99% of Chromecast applications are for playing media, so they provide a lot of those common ones for you.
And you may want to get messages back. You may want to receive messages from the receiver. This one, again, on the session, you will add a message listener, which is basically just a very specific event listener. Then you give it the namespace, and then you receive the messages back. The messages that you get back actually have to be strings, so if you want to send back an object, you have to parse it, and you have to have it as JSON, and you can parse it and do whatever you want with it.
Quick question. Are there limitations on the payload size for the messages?
I'm not sure. We haven't run it, Tim, but we haven't really said anything back.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? That's not used, so it still works.
It's not a keyword, it's fine.
Yeah.
All right, so getting into the receiver a little bit more, okay? So Google provides 3 different types of applications that you can build for the receiver, okay? You have a default, or I should say the default, which is effectively, I don't want to build an application. It is purely based on streaming media. I get no branding, no styling, nothing like that. I just want to play a video, okay? And that's the app ID 1 that he was talking about earlier. The second is a styled one, which effectively allows you to provide some custom CSS, so you can do a little bit of branding, a little bit of styling, moving things around. But for the most part, you are still getting the basic default application that is built for streaming media, that is set up to listen for, play, pause, rewind, seek, that kind of stuff. But you can kind of move stuff around on the page a little bit. And then third option is, oh, that's not enough control for you, make whatever web page you want, okay? So that's what we're going to be diving into today a little bit. And they were also very nice enough to give us a nice little decision chart as to help you determine what type of app you need. Very simple, only a couple of steps, including, does your app stream media? Is media format supported? Sorry, Chromecast will not work with your app if you say no. So, it's kind of a mess. It gets a little janky. For the most part, it's if you're trying to stream media and you want custom styling and any custom interaction, you need to go to custom. Okay? So similar to the Sender app, there's two APIs that Google provides for you for the receiver application. One is going to be the base receiver API. That one is needed. You can't do it without it, okay? That is the one that's providing all the basic interaction, communication, that kind of stuff, to receive and send messages to and from the sender. The other one is the media player library, which is really built around the idea of supporting different audio and video formats, live streaming types, encryptions, DRMs, that kind of stuff. So in our examples today, we're not going to be using this, but know that it's there. Any questions on that? Pretty straightforward. Okay. So setting up the app, there's actually only 2 lines required to get your receiver registered and running, and that is the first one and the last one. Everything else is just settings and configuration of how you want your interaction to work with the app. So the first one, you need to get an instance of your cast receiver manager. Your cast receiver manager is effectively everything that you're going to set up in terms of sending and receiving messages, how to interact with the media, that kind of stuff. Here, we're taking the cast receiver manager and we're telling it, okay, on sender disconnected. So when we get a message from the API that says a sender just disconnected, we're going to check to see if we have any more senders connected to us, and if not, we're just going to close the app down. No point in continuing running.
I guess you probably wouldn't want to do this most of the time.
Yeah, so most of the time that's not what you're going to want to do. But yeah, in our case, like in theory, if we disconnect, if we tell it disconnect, this whole thing should shut down. And then the other stuff we're doing here, we get a config, we set the status to ready to present, which is what you see like in that drop down when you're looking at your Chromecast devices. You can change this on the fly later, so you can change it to like, casting and then,
Whatever media it is.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
anything you want to try.
Yeah, Hunger Games or
But
whatever.
which drop down did that show up in?
So in Chrome, they give you a drop down
Yeah.
when you go to cast, when you go to request a session.
Oh, and it shows you all the things that are happening right now.
Yeah, so it'll show you all your Chromecast devices that it knows
Yeah.
around you, and then like their current statuses.
Okay.
So this is where you can set that status.
Well, this one also will say if once you pick one and you start casting, it can say stuff there too.
Yeah, so you can change it later.
Yeah.
But in our initial setup, when we're first registering the app, or when we're first starting up the app, we're going to say ready to present. We can set, max inactivity, but the important one here is we're actually setting up a custom message bus. So this allows us to receive custom messages from the sender and start doing things with them. And we'll kind of go into that a little bit more in a couple slides. And then finally, the last one is start. There's also a stop. Stop doesn't close down the application, but it stops receiving messages and interacting with the Google Cloud.
Also, the status text is the only thing you can actually change after you've started your app.
That might be true.
If you try to make a new message bus, it will not like that.
Right.
When you do other things.
Yeah, most things you can't do after. There might be a couple other things that you can do afterward, though. I'm not sure on that.
Well, for that message bus, that string is just your namespace, I guess?
Yes, this is your namespace.
So yeah, in the previous slide where we were showing the sending and receiving of messages on the sender, that would be the same namespace.
So those have to match. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they have to if you want to hear the messages.
Right.
Like they don't have to match, but they will. So they would be able to talk.
Right. So then in terms of receiving messages, or at least custom messages, you're going to add an event listener to your message bus that we created in the previous slide, looking specifically for messages, and then you'll actually start receiving messages in this callback.
And even though you send a string to the receiver, the message is an object that it gets.
Yeah. So that is one confusing part. So the sender is sending strings, only strings.
That's awesome.
You get back an object with a bunch of data as to what that is, including message, or your message data, which is actually the string that they sent. It is not true the other way around. So when sending messages to the sender, which we'll get to next, you're going to send a string, but they get a string on the other end. They don't get an object.
Does it say why in the documentation?
Two different development groups.
It may not even say that that's the behavior in the documentation.
So you have two different types of communication to the sender applications. In general, you have a broadcast and then you have a send. Okay, your broadcast, you're effectively saying, okay, any senders out there that are connected to me, they all get this message. Okay, and then send is more targeted, so you can provide a sender ID. Sender IDs will come in on previous messages that you're receiving, so you can respond to messages. You can also, look at all your connected senders and actually get all the different sender IDs. So if you only want to select a few for some reason, you can do that as well. Most of the time, you're going to be using broadcast because most of the time you're sending out messages, it's to update your sender applications with your current state. So if I'm in a playlist and I want to tell all the sender apps, hey, I've moved on to this next video, you can tell them, okay?
All right, so you haven't covered this. You can have multiple senders for one receiver.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So in theory, everyone could right now with your phones connect to our application. And as long as you know the custom messages that our application is responding to, you can control our presentation.
And also, because Chromecast doesn't really have a lot of security, if you wanted to and you were on the network, you could just go in, stop our application, and start yours.
Yeah. There's no way for us to stop that.
Yeah.
You can always stop the application from running.
So you could kind of really write your own distributed Slack, right? We could each have our senders on our phones that would send a chat
to a common.
And then it could also rebroadcast it back to everyone else's senders, so they could see it locally and.
Okay, so can I drive through my neighborhood and trash everyone's Chromecast?
Yes.
If you can get on the network,
As long as you can get on their network.
If I get on their network, I don't
Or if their
give a crap
window's
about their
open in your
Chromecast. Actually, I probably do, actually, because I could stream through their Chromecast and they would never know.
Yep.
You really mess with them.
until they
until they see it on the TV.
Yeah.
And a lot of apps that have multiple senders, they broadcast they don't broadcast, sorry, they display on the screen who just joined. So if you're doing like YouTube and everyone adds videos to the queue, it tells you at the top who did what, right? It'll say, Mark did this, Joe did this, Marky did this, added this video. So
Right.
that's kind of the way that works already. So you could not. They would
But
know
that's
it was
but
you.
that's assuming you've logged into YouTube.
Yeah, I mean,
So if you're not logged in on YouTube on your Android phone or whatever,
Uh-huh.
and you add a video, I believe it just says anonymous.
It says the phone name if you're not logged in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could probably create a dummy one though if you really want to get at
no.
somebody.
You can pick what your name
I mean,
is.
how stupid do you think I am?
You can make a YouTube of anything you want.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So broadcast, you're effectively updating everyone. Like, okay, here's the current state of things. Send is usually used as more of a response to a previous message, right? So if the sender wants to know a piece of information or something like that, they can send a request, and then the Chromecast can then respond and say, okay, here's the information you wanted or whatever. One thing to mention, because again, these are strings that you can send, you're going to probably use a lot of JSON if you actually want to send any sort of complex objects to and from the sender and receiver. So we'll get into some code.
This is the entirety of the sender HTML code. It's just a bunch of buttons, and I load my JavaScript. That's all it really takes. The JavaScript code is a little more in depth, but still, it's maybe 50 lines for the entire app. There's actually a little bit of boilerplate removed. I did remove the that initial function that you guys saw, and unfortunately it was a little small. But yeah, there's just a bunch of button listeners that, when clicked, send a message, previous, next, first, last, to the Chromecast. There's a start one that will request a session when you click on it. And then I have a message. I only have one message listener in this case, where I'm just listening to the messages on the namespace. And in this app, I'm just taking whatever message they send. I'm parsing it from using JSON parse to make the actual object we're sending, and I set it to a div on my sender app, so I see the slides.
Can we see that? What you're looking at?
Yeah.
Well, this slide isn't too good because it doesn't load the image, and we're gonna cast this afterwards, so you can actually see this application.
Oh, cool.
So this is just, I set all this stuff up. I call my init Chromecast, which then does that WinCast API ready function that initializes everything when it gets back that it is good.
In terms of the receiver app, we wanted to make them distinctly different, simply to show you guys that they're completely unrelated apps. We're actually running a React app on the receiver right now to do the presentation. This is our, really generic boilerplate kind of React application, or at least start of it. Next one we'll show is the slideshow component, which is where most of the logic is happening, but it's still not a huge amount. Effectively, we have, again, a lot of boilerplate React stuff. As soon as we start up, we go to the first slide, kind of, simple. We grab that custom message bus. So there's another file that effectively contains all the previous code that I showed you guys to actually set up the receiver. And that's pretty much the entire application other than the slides, right? So here we have the listener for those messages coming in from the sender app. We then call first, last, previous, or next, which are down here, maybe about that long. And then set active slide, which will send a message of the component of the slide that it's going to render to the screen. and it will send that across to the sender so that the sender can then take that and shove it into the inner HTML so that we can actually see it on the sender app. Yeah, and then we just broadcast that so everyone can actually get it. Any questions about that? Like the application outside of that really doesn't do much.
I guess in the code, so the first thing that you showed was HTML, I thought I saw require.js there, and then I didn't see any of that in here. And then when you showed React, I was like, well, I saw JSX in there as well. So, I mean, this is like pre-transpile, so if you have to transpile this for it to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, Chrome doesn't directly support JSX.
Oh yeah,
It's
yes,
transpiled.
React does. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
So this is code that you've written, but then you're transpiling it before you say, here's our, excuse me, our receiver app or
Correct.
whatever, right? Okay.
Yep. Though because it is running Chrome, you can write ES6 and that'll be fine as long as you don't have imports and exports, right?
But do you have to update your receiver app though? So like if you want to make some changes, you can just upload it to the server or whatever, right? You don't have to like mess up the rest of your workflow, right? You can just say, hey, there's a new image I'm going to throw up here.
Yep.
And it should take place right now, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like publishing any other web application, right? You're just publishing it off to your server wherever it's being hosted from, and then the receiver will pull it from that.
Right,
that
but
web
you don't have to
host.
notify Google or go into configuration.
Nope.
Nope. Yep. You completely.
Humor me. So that web page that I'm looking at right now is on the Digital Primates site? Or
It's actually on our Heroku site.
okay, but it's on
But
your
yes.
site. So what is the actual receiver doing? Is it reaching out to your website, grabbing the HTML, coming back and displaying it every time?
Yep, it's just rendering
Page
that
one,
page.
page
Yep.
2, page 3.
Yep, so the React app is simply just running a new, or it's just grabbing the next slide and inserting the content, just like any other React app. Because it's just doing a React DOM render.
Why don't you have
To the top
all
level.
of that on the device then? Why keep that?
Oh, because we're not trying to. What do you mean? Why don't we have that on the device?
Well, the full app is there. It's not. There's not an app per
like
slide.
the HTML slides that you're seeing aren't on our server. I mean, they kind of are, but
Well, they're on the Heroku server. He's saying, I guess he's asking what exactly is on the Chromecast at this very moment. And obviously, this is single page thing. But I guess he's saying like, what if it wasn't? Could it be when you click here, go load the next page, like it's pulling another URL?
I think it has to be a single page
It
application.
has to be a JavaScript application in.
You might be able to
you
change
could,
window
you
to
could,
application.
But I think it would,
I don't see any
it
reason
may
why
act
not.
weird when you do that. But
Right, so that's what I'm trying to understand. So it's running Chrome, it's running your
Yeah.
app. It's not actually displaying your app. Or it is displaying your app, but
It is.
your app is
Yeah.
using external content.
No.
That's what
No.
I'm trying to wrap my head around.
So
it's
it
loading a
is
single page app.
literally just a Chrome browser. That's all. That is everything that is on the receiver. So all it's doing is hitting that page and displaying that page. So we could actually navigate to this slide deck on a web page at our herokuapp.com/whatever the URL is, and give the same presentation without the Chromecast.
Well, except you wouldn't have the buttons.
So when,
Right.
that's true.
where's
So-
the receiver code?
Though we did hardwire up the arrow keys.
So,
So-
is the receiver code on your Heroku app? Or is it on the device? This is what I'm trying to wrap my head around.
I mean,
where's your code?
both. So it's on the Heroku app.
The website is the receiver app
Yeah,
Right.
that gets loaded in the web browser that's on the Chromecast.
I kind of have the same question. Is it actually doing any sort of rendering on the device? Is it just streaming something rendered somewhere else?
No, it is rendering on the device.
So basically Chrome is
It
running
is
on the
it is a
Right.
Chrome browser running on your device.
Right. It's like a little weak old computer.
And quite literally, that's all that's on the device is a Chrome browser.
So the Chrome browser is actually on that small thing?
Chrome.
Yes.
Or anything running V8?
It is effectively running Chrome OS.
So is it?
We
Oh,
couldn't,
yeah.
Sort of.
we couldn't figure out if it actually is a stripped down version, but it seems to support
Yeah,
more than
everything-
Chrome itself. So
Yeah, everything
That's what I
we've
was
thrown
gonna-
at it,
I was
it
going to ask
works.
earlier, the one thing you said was unless you're using imports, but I know that's, I don't know if it's in Canary or something, but it's coming to Chrome very quickly. So, but then you said you don't know exactly what it's running. So it's not necessarily in sync with Chrome as we know it, Or
Yeah, I mean, they don't
Yeah,
really
they-
say.
They don't tell us.
So far, everything we've thrown at it, it works.
Local
more,
storage
like-
and things.
It has like stuff like
What about local
native,
storage?
We haven't tried
native
local
like
storage.
HLS and dash playback in here. Like you can just send it like an M3U8 and it should play it.
yeah, does it do Flash?
You can't do that. No, it definitely doesn't.
Definitely doesn't do Flash.
Your Chrome browser doesn't really do Flash anymore.
But yeah, I don't know about local storage. That'd be interesting.
It wouldn't-
I would assume that they probably lock that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to add to the confusion, so we're running this app,
Uh-huh.
but it can also, since it can get its resources from any place.
Yes.
So it can go grab images from some
Yeah,
other
we're
website that
Yep.
is not on Heroku.
And in fact, we actually have a slide coming up where you'll see we actually do load content from outside of the Heroku app.
Okay. Because
And
it's
even
still
then,
just
like,
a
I
single
guess-
page app.
React doesn't, like when we do a new slide, it renders it right then. It doesn't compile all those, does it?
No, it's not on
It's
the
all-
fly transpiling JSX.
No.
So that's being transpiled
Okay.
before we push it off. to the
Special
server.
version of Chrome.
Yeah.
Built-in Babel.
Anxious.
Take it on
All right, so our next slide is effectively a very slimmed down version of like the default app, okay? So the default app is just a full page video tag inside of Chrome with then some MSE stuff to support different media types and that kind of stuff.
And some listeners to control for the controls.
Right. So what we've done is in our React app, we shoved a video tag on.
Oh, this is porn.
Yeah. So let's go ahead. In theory, God, I hope this works.
Yay.
Woo! We should have audio.
I think we do.
I think
yeah.
I heard it.
Starts
It was
out
really
real
quiet.
This is what I use.
Yeah.
This is what counts for porn for video developers.
This is the video you use.
Oh yeah.
So your Chromecast device
Yes.
is sucking that down from the internet
Yep.
through my bandwidth.
Yes.
It's very small.
Yeah. We actually only have a minute segment of it,
We didn't
so
download
it's not the
full
whole
one.
thing. I think it's like 3 megs. So
where's
I'll
the
cut
file
you a check for like 30 cents or
I
something.
don't know. We found it before, and-
That's what I'm saying, right? So it's just the URL outside of Heroku, though, not in
Yes.
Heroku.
Yeah.
You had a video tag someplace in React that
Correct.
the URL in that video tag is pointing to this file someplace else.
And when
Correct.
if you do video content on it, if you have your own video content player, you'll probably have a CDN that has all of your video content that may be different from where your app is hosted. You just need to let it know where it's at.
Right. So if you're some big, media streaming company, sports network or something like that, like realistically, you're going to host your app, and the same server that's hosting your app isn't going to have all the streaming content that you're running. So that's going to be pulled through some other CDN. And,
Cool.
So this is effectively what the default app is,
Well, this would be a styled one.
except we've styled it with React. So that's effectively custom applications in Chromecast in a nutshell. Any other questions?
I'm super curious about the development process and.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I guess
There have been many occasions we've almost bought tickets to Google I/O because of how bad it is.
That was your excuse, anyway.
We just wanted to find the people.
Yeah.
So
We looked them up on LinkedIn. We know who they are.
did you guys just do this for giggles, or did you actually have a project to work on?
We have a project that we've done a lot of Chromecast work for.
Cool.
So outside of the documentation or API being bad, but I guess how do you get up and running? Like,
It was
what,
the registration process, right?
what's that? Yeah.
Yeah, so-
what's the registration process?
you
Can
do-
I
so you
just
sign in
fool
with
around
a-
at home without
So
dealing with all
you
that?
can sign in with a Google account to their developer site, whatever it is, I don't remember. And you can build custom sender apps for free. No, nothing required there. If you want to build a custom receiver app, they charge you $5 one time for as many receiver apps as you want.
Oh, really?
I think that's effectively a little gateway to make sure that people aren't just
$5.
fine. Yeah,
Well, it's $5 per account, and you can make as
Yeah.
many as you want.
So I think it's just a little bit of a roadblock so that they don't have a bunch of garbage crap out there.
Wait, you're saying for $5 I can write as many as I want, though?
Yes. Yes. I mean, you can write as much garbage crap as you want.
That's what I'm saying.
But
But
I think people who want to intentionally write apps that are going to do bad
Yeah.
things are
They're
probably
not gonna
not.
write.
They're not going to
spend
spend
$5
Yeah.
to do some dumb shit.
I mean,
I
it's
$5 to do it.
it's Google. I
That's
mean,
way
No,
more.
but it makes you kind of real though, right? So if you're
Yeah.
a malicious app and you get reported, your payment information has to be valid. Even if you stole that information,
that's true.
Well,
it has to be valid. So you're a real person as opposed to like,
That's true.
hidden. So that's
Yeah,
probably
that's
why
true.
it's only $5.
So one thing you guys didn't mention is once you've got this app on your Chromecast, I'm assuming there's some Chromecast store or something that people can go find your app that you can
No.
register with. I mean,
There's not.
Nope.
You have to. Google will give you a randomly generated. It's randomly generated ID, and you have to tell whoever's going to wants to use that ID. You have to let them know.
well,
So
so
if
if
you're
I buy a
Netflix-
Chromecast and I plug it in, it comes up and it says, "Hello, would you like to watch Netflix?"
Well, you would have to go to Netflix.
So,
yeah, well, Netflix
so
is
your
built in.
your
There's
app
some
does
partners that are built
on
in.
your phone. Like Google Home will say, "Oh, here's some recommended apps."
Yeah.
But those are ones
So I
that.
can't get my app on there.
I mean, I'm sure if you
When you
pay
can,
Google
yeah, you
enough,
just
they'll
gotta
put
get
it on there.
So doesn't that become very restrictive for making it publicly available for as many people as possible?
Well, I think
A little bit of the App Store.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because of it's effectively. I guess the idea is if someone you already need to be in their app. Like it would be the app developer who says, "I have an app that does this. I already want to go to that and say we also have a Chromecast feature." So they would know that because they would make the Chromecast app, so they would have that ID. It's not just like anyone anywhere would say, "I wonder what's in Chromecast." You would go to that thing's website or their app.
Yeah, because I mean Chromecast, at least outside of like what you guys are showing, which makes me very interested. It's usually just like an add-on to some other
Right.
Yes.
app. So
Yes.
like, there is no
And
It's a Roku
Chromecast
competitor, though, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think realistically what they're doing is they're looking at apps that are published to the Google Play Store and seeing which ones utilize Chromecast APIs.
Yeah.
And those are probably registered as Chromecast apps. So you're not actually registering the receiver, you're registering your sender, if that makes sense. Or at least that's what they're picking up on,
Okay.
like, here's all the Chromecast apps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you seen in the store at all, like any apps that this is only a Chromecast app? Mostly it's like an add-on. Will they even accept it if this is just a Chromecast app?
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't even tell them. You just say, "I want to make a new app. I want to make a Chromecast app," and it's like, "Okay, here's your ID. Here's a space where you put the URL." And there's a couple of checkboxes. They don't care what the app is.
I mean, like in the store.
Oh, in the App Store. I'm not sure. I don't know if they
So
would allow that. But
I'm not sure
he was talking
exactly
about
what
just
you mean.
something
Like,
that just
So,
does
so
Chromecast.
like everyone's thinking, like, I just want to make a Chromecast app. So if you want to make an app that's only for Chromecast, can you make an app only for Chromecast and submit it? Because everything you download does something else in app Chromecast on. I just want to have you seen it.
So you gotta get the
oh, I see.
sender
I mean,
app
so the
that
thing
people
is, you
can
still
send,
have to
right?
have a sender,
Yeah.
even if it's just a button that says start. You know, right?
Well, I
Because
mean,
it's
if
the
you-
sender.
I think what he's asking is like if you made if you had an app in the Google Store that only interact. Like if I made an app that just like gave you a text box and said Chromecast
Or a
media.
game, so you can only play this game on the TV.
Yeah, something like that, where it says, okay, you have to. It's only. This is just it would just be a sender app that basically just
I
says,
see what you're
hey, this starts Chromecast. Like I don't know if there's rules against it. I mean, I don't know why they would block it.
I mean, I'm sure that they have them. I mean, they have a game API.
but most of those, I think you do some interaction.
Yeah, I mean,
with
I would
your
assume
phone
like your
and stuff.
phone is like your controller or something like that, you know? But yeah, I mean, I haven't really played with any of those.
Well, they probably have custom APIs.
Like most of the stuff that we've worked on is all like media streaming stuff, which usually has some other component or way to watch it. Right.
Quick question. I'm still curious about I guess this would be more like the administrative or the management of your apps.
Sure.
Just another Google UI that has You know, you log into your Google account, you got some Chromecast application administration panel or something like that, which
It's
It's
just a
literally just-
website that has like a list of each one, and when you click on it, and there's a couple options, like one's just where your app is hosted.
Yeah,
just
so you
put
can
in the
change that URL.
There's a couple other things like do you want it to be seen for Chromecast audio, and there's a few other options you can do on it. But yeah, it's just a really basic website where you register. There's the link to make a new app. And then it gives you the ID, and it's effectively just a blank thing that you have to give it what it's going to do.
And if you want to create a new one, if it's the first one that you've ever created, it'll redirect you to a page that says pay us $5, and then you can do as many as you want.
Gotcha.
I think the other button on there is publish.
Oh yeah.
So right now all of these apps are technically in dev mode. So you have to have a device that's also been registered with Google.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's
launch
another
it.
mechanism on that page too. You register the serial number or the MAC address of a Chromecast device, and any apps that are on your account that aren't published can only be seen by the devices you register.
So on the server side, like when you have your app on your server, have you like looked at the requests coming from the Chromecast to your server? And if you have, is it coming from the Chromecast, or is there any? Do you see any other requests that coming from the Google API to your?
Like whenever you send or receive messages from the
like
sender
this,
app.
like this right here, you said this is hosted on a server somewhere.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So on your server right now, these requests are going straight to your server. Are they? Is there something in between? If on your server you see requests coming from?
No, you'll only see from the server requests from the receiver device.
So from that device,
Yep.
it's going to your okay.
Correct.
So you
Yep.
actually see the Chromecast getting images and getting HTML
Yep.
and CSS.
So you guys were talking about development. Besides the docs being awful, when you're actually, what does your feedback look like? Do you actually have to publish your application, just connect it
So-
to the Chromecast, or?
So in terms of testing it on the Chromecast device, yes, you have to publish it to your site. And then on dev devices, you have to either do a hard refresh. So there's it built into Chrome, you can inspect a device locally on your network. So you can actually debug it in Chrome on the network. So you can force a hard reload there to actually wipe the cache and reload the page, or you unplug the device and plug it back in.
So there's no way to just within your, workstation to just say like, have another tab or something that actually has your application?
Well, you can do that. So the thing is, like, outside of to actually test the Chromecast specific things, you can't. It won't do it. Like,
Right.
but for like our app, we can hit that URL and bring it up as a web app,
Absolutely.
Right.
and it'll run as well as it will. There will be some errors because we have a bunch of Chromecast specific stuff that we can't test until we actually get it onto the Chromecast.
So there's no like extension or something that'll have those APIs temporarily or something to kind of simulate. So you're literally just.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So like most of the development that we did was building the React app to be the presentation slides, and that was just being run locally.
Absolutely.
Which is why I also have the arrow keys hooked up as previous and next slide, because that's how we tested it.
And you can't test anything on the sender app until you actually are able to connect to a receiver effectively.
Right.
That's gonna be slow.
Yeah.
There's some slow turnaround at times, yeah.
So then, but with this JavaScript API, so people like to do things with the hybrid apps, right? But you probably couldn't do like hybrid app with this particular code because you don't have access to that window API in Chrome, right? Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
What do you
So,
mean? No.
like if you're using Ionic, for instance, and
You
you
can
want
still
to,
get to window.
but it's not Chrome window though, right? So that's the thing I'm thinking about because you said you need Chrome to be able to do this stuff. Because earlier we said we couldn't do it in Firefox.
True. Yeah.
You gotta do it in Chrome. So Ionic has the web view, but that web view may or may not be Chrome. So you probably couldn't pull this off, I bet.
It's Chrome on Android, so you're good on
Yeah,
Android.
but what about iOS? Right?
Safari
Yeah,
for
maybe not.
Safari.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So then you can only have like an Android version. If you can do this in Ionic, it would probably only work if you have like Android, a certain version that uses Chrome as the web view.
You're talking about for a sender app.
For a sender app, yeah.
Or Sender app.
I don't
That
understand
was-
why
Sender
your
app's
challenge
not on
would
the
have.
Chromecast.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know where your challenge would be.
No. The sender app is the receiver's
The receiver is a website.
Right, but
Yeah.
I'm saying the sender. In the beginning, we showed that it had the window, __ on Chromecast API available.
Yes.
Right.
But that code only works if it's Chrome.
I see what you're saying.
Yes, yes.
So,
And you need access to that window,
right.
that namespace.
So the thing is,
like
you
that.
could make it in Ionic, but realistically, as soon as you go to iOS running on Safari or whatever,
Right, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
it's not going to work.
Wait, so that doesn't make sense to me. So what if I had a iOS completely native app, but I wanted to support Chromecast?
Sure.
And I couldn't do that.
No, you
No,
could.
no,
there
you
is a
can.
Chromecast
That's the case
API.
for
Yes.
JavaScript.
But
Yeah.
Ionic is running effectively in
Yeah,
a web
browser.
view.
Okay.
I'm saying specifically avoiding writing Swift code and writing Java
Yeah.
for the Chromecast
Right.
and using this JavaScript
Yeah,
as a way around.
you probably couldn't do
You
that.
probably could
and-
only do it on Android.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense.
You should do that tonight when you get home.
I didn't say I wasn't.
Proof of concept.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I mean, two questions really. One, hardware. I know, like, I think I've got that one at home, but now they've got like a much more rounder
Yeah, we
one or
have.
something like
So
that.
this is the Gen 2, and then there's a
Right.
new one that's a little fatter. That's the Gen. It's not really a Gen 3. It's just a 4K.
It's a 4K version.
It costs twice as much.
Alright.
Just
So-
as many problems.
4K TV.
Hardware and then software, I mean, is it changing rapidly? It seemed like you guys didn't know that much about what exactly type of Chrome or version of Chrome it was running. Are they not very
They just
open
don't
about
publish any of that.
So,
we couldn't find
so they do
information.
say that the effectively the version that they're running on each device is all the same. So anything that you build for Gen 2 will also work on Gen 1.
Yeah.
It just might be a little slower. You might not get the same frame rate, that kind of stuff. But yeah, in terms of software, they're identical.
Cool. Discord. Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And we don't know anything about Chromecast audio. We've never done it, so.
We can check
But that-
the locks. I
that
imagine
technically
it's
exists.
basically the same. I think you just send it. You just have to send it like an audio file. I
Right.
imagine. I don't know if you can send a video and it only plays the audio. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think anybody buys Chromecast audio.
I set you up a couple weeks ago.
I had a question. You said they have a game API too? So like
Yeah.
how this is probably really laggy though, right? You're not.
I mean, we haven't done much with the game API, but they do have the API to calculate vectors and all that kind of stuff for gaming graphics and that kind of
No,
stuff.
but he's talking about like since this is a remote control. Like,
Oh yeah,
If
the
you're
communication
able to
yeah.
Google.
up and down
Yeah.
everything, right?
And
So-
it doesn't let you connect directly though, even with the game API?
Correct. Yeah.
They force you.
Yeah.
They don't want anyone.
There's
circumventing them.
definitely some latency between like when you click and
It's not-
when you see it.
It's usually not too bad. When like we do stuff, it's not terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, there still could be.
Like I think it's definitely meant more for like. Have any of you guys ever played like You Don't Know Jack or whatever? They have. Yeah, they have like Roku versions and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's like very simple interaction between your phone and the Roku or the, whatever TV device you're using. I would assume most of their game API is meant for that kind of stuff.
There is a tutorial I saw that does, which it's a weird tutorial because it doesn't give any of the code, so I couldn't just look at it and take all that stuff. They set up like effectively like a soccer kind of app where you are controlling like where you're swiping the ball to go on your phone and on your TV, and the goalie's trying to stop it kind of thing.
Wait, you're saying they don't have Angry Birds?
Yeah.
I could see that
Yeah,
making
they-
Angry Birds for the TV.
They got Angry
Might be a
Birds
little
everywhere.
weird,
for
but
everything.
Yeah, they got Angry Birds movie. They got one for Chromecast.
When you're using your like an Android phone and you're doing direct Chromecast, that's obviously a direct connection. That's not actually using some Android app going through the cloud, right?
When you're streaming your
But
device
no,
to
you know
the
how
TV,
you can cast your if you have an Android.
it's going through Google's
Yeah,
cloud.
you're sending to Google,
really?
and then
Yeah.
it's sending to your Chromecast.
Which is why it like you can see.
That's why it's
Yeah.
Yeah, like visible stuttering. It's literally because you're pushing your up traffic and then it's pulling that right back down.
Yeah, I tried just as an experiment to cast like a Android game to see if but it's going through the cloud. That's why it's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even like casting tabs or casting your desktop or whatever, it's the same thing. Like it's really slow because it's literally pushing the up and then pulling it down.
So some TVs have without a Chromecast, you can cast to that TV. Like Samsung TVs do that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is there any, so is there just really a cast API, and then Google has made their own flavor of this thing, and it's just like a universal standard or spec for casting?
Dial, right? Dial.
Yeah.
What's it called?
No, I think-
Yeah, kind of like that. So I wonder if this is the same thing, but just with Google's flavor.
I don't think
on
so.
top.
I think Google,
Yeah.
for those, for like the TVs, the smart TVs that have a built-in app, I think it's actually just like a Google app that's written there that's just effectively what is on a Chromecast, only it's run through an app, not.
Well, the reason I ask is because, as the TV that I have right now, when I open up YouTube and I hit the little cast button, it shows me the Roku, shows me the TV, and it shows me the Chromecast.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
if I understand it right, like for example, Nexus, Google Phone.
Yeah.
I can only cast, if I'm casting, say, just a video that I'm playing in a web page. From here, I can only cast to my Chromecast devices, because Google is locking into that. But if I have the YouTube app, YouTube is going to give me the ability to cast to Chromecast, Roku, whatever, because the app at that point is using the APIs or whatever it's supposed
Oh, okay.
The Chromecast
That kind of makes
or the
sense.
Right.
Chromecast.
Okay, I think about it.
Yep. Yeah, so I believe Miracast I believe Roku actually uses Miracast, which is an open standard.
And so you're saying they just implemented all those APIs to
Google
do
wants you behind those.
across,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if we have.
Yeah, I had to double check.
35%.
There's this thing called Dial,
devices,
Discovery
like
and
the
Launch.
stick
That's
devices.
developed by Google and a little bit of Netflix, I think for the Chromecast. But I remembered reading about it when it first came out, so I would look that up. But it says a lot of TVs support it now too. So
Any sort of idea about like the specs, like the chip, or I'm sure it probably uses some specialized architecture as far as like RAM and all that stuff. But you have any idea of the specs on it?
I don't know. I'm sure someone's bought one and tore it down and
I mean, I
and
think-
can give all this stuff, but we
I
haven't
think
really looked
Google
into it.
even says,
Really?
I think they have a little spec page, yeah. I would imagine it's really, really underpowered, yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
We can't.
Yeah, let's pass the sender up so they can see it as well. All right, one more thing. One more thing.
We're not letting
well, we already clapped.
See, so this is actually mirroring my tab. You can see like this website's really simple. Nothing will work now though.
Yeah.
Like when I hit next and stuff, it's trying to connect to the Chromecast session, which isn't doing anything.
Because the receiver app is dead now.
Yeah.
I
I switched it, yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
So-
I wonder, does it
Can you move
actually
the-
cast the Chromecast?
So it moves the mouse over.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
I
it doesn't.
guess.
That's smart enough not to do that.
So anyway, so
it's
it's-
actually super helpful. That like solidifies what just happened for me. 'Cause I'm like, wait, this is what you were saying? Oh.
Yeah, so literally this whole,
It's the sender.
the sender
That
app
was
is
the
literally
receiver
just a
app.
few buttons and then the content of the slide coming back from that message that we then just shove right onto the DOM.
Minus the pictures, because for some reason we don't.
Yeah, I wonder why the pictures don't work.
I don't know.
Oh, they're probably relative URLs, that's probably why.
You think so?
Yeah, I bet that's why.
Oh.
We didn't look into the images, we didn't really care.
You know.
My guess is they're just relative URLs, that's why they're not rendering.
Cool. Well,
So,
thank you.
Super awesome.
Yeah, yeah.